Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Jessica Clemons. A movie I've been waiting for finally released digitally on November 7th, and that's Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. Based on the well-known and beloved novel Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which has inspired endless adaptations. While many remakes borrow pieces of Shelley's story and themes, few capture the same intimacy and emotional weight that Guillermo del Toro brings to his film. Frankenstein radiates under del Toro's unforgettable craftsmanship, his darkly whimsical imagination, his fascination with life and death, a lot of generational trauma, and his gift for finding beauty in darkness and in ugliness and in everything just abnormal. In Mary Shelley's novel, not strictly through plot, but in the deep emotional, volatile, and anxious core that weaves through her pages. It goes without saying that this is my cup of tea. I've loved Guillermo del Toro forever, and I knew I would love the writing in this movie. So in this video, I'll be breaking down the movie, but mainly analyzing it, what Guillermo was pulling from the novel, what he wanted to explore, and also the hidden details and Easter eggs that you might have missed, because that's what our channel does. And also, there's a lot of details in this breakdown. You're noticing this video is coming out a lot later than actual Frankenstein did, and that's because I was sick. And you might hear it in my voice a little bit, and we're just gonna ignore it. We're just going to ignore it. This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes launching your own website a breeze. Let's get back into it. As I mentioned earlier, Frankenstein is the perfect story for someone like Guillermo del Toro, the master of unloved monsters, if you will. At just 7 years old, he saw the 1931 Frankenstein, and by 11, he read Mary Shelley's novel. For a boy raised Catholic, it became the framework for understanding faith itself. When his mother spoke of Jesus and holiness, resurrection, and immaculate conception, everything clicked with the help of Frankenstein, a book that features the Son, the Father, and the Holy Spirit. How could it not be religious allegory? It was from that point forward that he always thought about Frankenstein. You can trace that influence through all of his work: the misery of eternal life in Pinocchio, the cruel world that forces rebellion in Pan's Labyrinth, and the decaying haunted beauty you see in Crimson Peak. Guillermo says that he's been working on this movie as a deep dive for the past 50 years and has finally been able to bring it to the big screen. The film opens farthermost north, 1857. From the very start, Guillermo del Toro leans into the color for the storytelling. In the Arctic, everything is bathed in gold, blue, and white hues. Most of the costumes throughout the film are also color-coded. Elizabeth in green representing nature, blue is tied to the men, and red symbolizes motherhood and the quest for eternity. I'll dive deeper into the costume details later, but for now, it's clear that del Toro is working with a very intentional and limited palette. However, the colors gold, blue, and white are important because they represent fragments of both Victor and the creatures' lives and their journeys, bringing it full circle at the end of the film. You'll see the palette shift as the story perspective changes. Victor's memories of childhood appear in stark white, black, and red, but when the creature's voice enters, everything transforms. The tone softens, the camera slows, and the film becomes what del Toro calls a pastoral fairy tale. It's not just the colors. His youthful years are shot with a lively, sweeping camera movements, and Guillermo has explained how this opening Arctic sequence was very deliberate, the camera pushing us through the Arctic. Much like Shelley's novel, it draws us forward, propels us into the story with curious minds like Victor's. There's so much he's already established, and Guillermo del Toro brings a lot to the table as a director, writer, and creative, but he's nothing without his long-standing crew that can make sense of his imagination. The lavish, intricate sets led by production designer Tamara Devrel, stunning prosthetics and creature design from Mike Hill, exquisite cinematography from Dan Lauzen, magnificent detailed costumes by Kate Hawley, and of course a magical fairy tale score by Alexandre Desplat. But this project didn't happen overnight. On the Director's Cut podcast with Bradley Cooper, he explained that Frankenstein was first in development in Universal back in like 2003. At that time, he envisioned it as a grand epic, possibly even 2 or 3 parts, but he couldn't secure the funding. Fortunately, the project was revived when Netflix dropped some major big bucks and some major support. And I mean, he did get you the Oscar for Pinocchio, so it's the least you can do. Guillermo described his vision as both a chamber piece and an epic, emphasizing that everything had to be real, from the hand-loomed fabrics of the costumes to the massive 25-foot miniatures that inevitably will get blown up. Tamara Devrel, the production designer who worked with Guillermo del Toro on Nightmare Alley and Cabinet of Curiosities, explained how this was actually shot on a parking lot at Netflix studios in Toronto. They built a metal base structure and covered it with styrofoam and silicone to create the massive icebergs, then layered real snow and ice on top of that. The rest, VFX, except for the ship. Through extensive research, the team also built the ship from scratch, drawing inspiration from Sir John Franklin's Arctic expedition vessels Terror and Erebus. The beginning of the film functions much like the opening of Mary Shelley's novel, an expedition, a ship trapped in the ice. But instead of Robert Walton, we have Lars Mikkelsen's Captain Anderson. In the film, the ship is later revealed to be called Horisont, meaning horizon. Guillermo del Toro has spoken about the ship as if it was another character in the story. By the final scene, when the creature stands before the sunrise over the horizon bathed in sunlight, the name takes on a deeper meaning, symbolizing not just the new beginnings, but a counterpoint to the isolation of Shelley's original Arctic ending. Where the novel ends in this kind of loneliness, Del Toro's Horizon might suggest hope and rebirth. When we first see Oscar Isaac's Victor injured and alone in the snow, this is the first of the film's many religious visual motifs. As I mentioned earlier, Guillermo has long used Frankenstein as a lens to explore his faith. Here, Victor's agony is immediately met with consolation from the shipmates. It's similar to the imagery of countless oil paintings depicting Jesus after being taken down from the cross or cradled in the arms of mourners. This was deliberate. Guillermo draws a parallel between the humanity and care in both moments while still highlighting that their suffering will later turn into redemption. We'll see more religious depictions throughout the film, with the red cape that's put on his shoulders like Jesus when mocked before being crucified. The creature who's clearly being crucified. The creature also has a wound on the right side like Jesus after being wounded by the spear. And to Guillermo's account, he resurrected after the third day on the battlefield, and he also noted that Victor says it is done after building the creature, as God said it is done after creating the world. By now you've probably noticed the shift in color, the heavy green hue that takes over as the creature appears on the screen. Jacob Elordi, as many know, had only 4 weeks to prepare for this role. It was originally meant for Andrew Garfield, but due to the strikes and scheduling conflicts, he couldn't take it on. Thankfully, Jacob stepped in and delivered a phenomenal performance, speaking little to no dialogue until like halfway through the movie. Standing at 6'5", prosthetic designer Mike Hill spends up to 10 hours daily applying 42 prosthetic pieces from head to toe, 14 just for the head and neck, and the removal process alone required 90 minutes in an inflatable sauna. Mike Hill's collaboration with Guillermo del Toro, like many of the others in the film, grew over time. Hill had previously designed creatures for Nightmare Alley and The Shape of Water. While the process was highly collaborative, Guillermo rarely gave explicit instructions, focusing instead on what he didn't want, the creature to be hideous. This iteration of the creature is tall and lean, and the scars etched across its body is the form that Victor took to assemble him in. As Hill explains, there's a certain beauty that Victor was striving for. He tried to make a beautiful glass window, it just ended up stained and broken. And I just think this still rings true to the novel, as Victor quipped in the book, his limbs were in proportion, that I had selected his features as beautiful, no matter how ugly he is now to Victor. They also kept the shriveled complexion with straight black lips that's noted in the book as well. What I love about this design of the creature is that it resembles that like anatomical illustrations from 1800 like vintage science books. The shape of the head, the line work, and the rustic scientific vibe make it feel more grounded in medical study than any of the other Frankenstein adaptations that I saw. Guillermo del Toro has said that he knew Jacob could pull it off the moment he saw his eyes. Playing Frankenstein's creature, you might assume the performance relies heavily on the growls or physicality, but the novel emphasizes the eyes a lot. And when Victor first appears before the creature in the book, he reminds us of those ghoulish eyes. His hair was of lustrous black and flowing, his teeth of pearly whiteness. But these luxuriances only formed a more horrid contrast with his watery eyes that seemed almost of the same color as the dun white sockets in which they were set. We kick things off with Victor's Tale Part 1. In Mary Shelley's original novel, the story unfolds through layers, retold through Walton's letters, Victor's story, the creature's perspective, and then back again. Guillermo del Toro takes the same idea and turns it into something more cinematic, using separate tales or chapters each time to have its own distinct look and tone. And honestly, that's very Guillermo del Toro. Many of his movies already feel like modern fairy tales just divided into lessons. Victor's childhood home was actually created by combining 4 real-life estates across the UK. One was Wilton House in Wiltshire, England, which is the same historic estate used in Bridgerton and The Crown. Victor's mother, Claire, is played by Mia Goth, and Mike Hill even sculpted her forehead and nose to resemble Oscar Isaac, since she's playing his mother as well as Elizabeth. Visually, her sequences always stand apart. We often hear her more than we even see her in the movie, and red follows her throughout Victor's journey. Red represents his mother, as well as motherhood, life, passion, and the quest for eternity. From that point on, red becomes a reoccurring symbol in Victor's clothes and his home, reinforcing the mama's boy idea. The bed was his mother's, which goes wherever he goes, and those gloves were also his mother's. We see the blood-stained hand that marks Victor's back. The scene with his mother's effigy in the casket adorned with red flowers is mirrored in Elizabeth's bonnet in Victor's room. The archangel that becomes living, breathing red reveals itself to be death. Even Elizabeth's white gown as she dies is streaked with red. Throughout the film, red comes and goes, but it always stems from the themes of motherhood, life, passion, and the quest for eternity. Guillermo del Toro loves the color red also. In his other movies, Nightmare Alley and Pan's Labyrinth, red represents innocence. But here, for Guillermo, the representation of motherhood as red was deeply personal. During the shooting of this movie, he finally started processing his father's death after The Shape of Water and his mother's passing just before Pinocchio opened. That personal grief bleeds into Victor's story. Exploring the loss of a mother was central to shaping Victor's emotional journey, which was explored in the book, but definitely more deeply here. November
Summer's all about Thanksgiving. You want your food, your home, and your guest list to be perfect. It's a lot of work, and that's why most of us don't host things. If you're online, you probably feel the same way about websites. It's easier to visit one than to build one, unless you use Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one tool that gives you everything you need to make a website that looks good and does whatever you need it to do. If you're selling goods or services, Squarespace can help you untangle digital payment platforms with just a few clicks, making it easy to start receiving payments right away using popular payment methods like Apple Pay, ACH Direct Debit, Klarna, and more. Plus, Squarespace's design intelligence tool makes it easy to get your website looking just right. It combines 2 decades of industry-leading design expertise with cutting-edge AI technology. Every Squarespace website is optimized to be indexed with meta descriptions, an auto-generated sitemap, and more, so you show up more often to more people in global search engine results. Head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/newrockstars to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
We then get the heartbreaking moment when Victor loses his mother, and I love Pan's Labyrinth. It will always be one of my favorite Guillermo del Toro movies, honestly, probably is my #1. But it's sad, yet heartbreaking to see the parallels between Victor's mother's death and Ophelia's mother in Pan's Labyrinth. A child losing a beloved mother just far too early, yet still bringing in new life as well. The lullaby-like music even feels familiar. The score was composed by Alexandre Desplat, who also worked with Guillermo on The Shape of Water and Pinocchio. The score works so well for this film. It's more elegant than frightening. It's more fragile than boisterous. I could go to sleep to it, but I would dream wonderful dreams listening. Victor's father, Leopold Frankenstein, is played by Charles Dance, whom you might know from Game of Thrones. Hated him in Game of Thrones. Who didn't hate him in Game of Thrones? In this film, his backstory is darker than it was in the novel. It's implied that he may have let Victor's mother die to continue his experiments, which in turn messes Victor up psychologically. In this scene, and a lot of others, you're gonna see Victor young and old drinking milk 24/7. The production designer actually spoke on this, saying he was mother obsessed. He was always a kid who never grew up until he became a father of the creature. So drinking milk is kind of a symbol of adolescence, of being connected to your childhood. I would also argue it's a bit of an Oedipus complex, because is that not what Victor and his mom and Elizabeth are kind of about? I think they are. In his teachings, Victor's father strikes the right side of his face, and no less than 3 minutes later, his mother dies, and her final act is to cradle his left cheek. These mirror gestures weirdly establish a visual language that carries throughout the film. The creature mirrors his creator. Victor touches his right cheek, the same side his father once struck, symbolizing the continuation of the inherited cycle of pain. Later, he beats the creature's right side as well, like his father, with a tool, a long rod-like tool. Later, the old blind man gently caresses the creature's left cheek, echoing the maternal tenderness Victor once received from his mother. Elizabeth later slaps Victor across that same left cheek, the one his mother last touched. Both women represent unconditional love for Victor, his mother as the origin, and unfortunately Elizabeth as the continuation. And the same hand of love becomes one of judgment, and that maternal energy he once relied on now condemns him. I think the physical violence and that pain is actually deliberate throughout the film, and Guillermo weaves in other strange, almost obsessive details like this, choices that seem wild at first but make perfect sense emotionally and thematically. So I don't know, I think it's a deep pull, but I think it is true to the story. We're then at the Royal College of Medicine Disciplinary Tribunal in 1855. Circles are a significant theme in this film as well, whether it's representing life or how the film will just bring us right back to where we began. Here, the location also had to be a circle. Victor's clothing evolves alongside him throughout the film. As a child, he's in black and white, but now amongst the aristocrats, his foolishness and rebelliousness have a 70s rock star energy, with David Bowie serving as the inspiration for these outfits. Yet, the heavy, worn, and torn velvets reflect a man who has run out of money and is desperate for backing. This demonstration we're about to watch just highlights the crazed, mad scientist side of Victor Frankenstein, how troubled he is, almost believing himself to be above God. It sets the stage for the narrative that he has an endless appetite for uncovering the truth, when in reality, he's trying to outrun his own fears. The biggest one, beating death after losing his mother, losing his life. Guillermo spoke with the New York Times about this scene, noting that even here, the red ball symbolizes his mother's death and his quest for immortality. Watch how he juggles it, he plays with it, toys with it, yet believes he's in control despite that underlying uncertainty and knowing that he is not in control of it. This is also the moment where the red batteries are first introduced. We learn that one of the men is actually Ralph Ineson, whom you may know from literally everything. He's in everything. He also played Galactus recently in Fantastic Four. He's playing Professor Krempa. Dr. Krempa was featured in the novel as the initial professor to Victor when he first arrived at the college. In The Curse of Frankenstein, he was Victor's assistant. The creature he reanimates is completely practical. It's a puppet with a blue screen puppeteers behind it, which were edited out in post-production clearly. Even the catch of the ball, though, was done by the puppeteers. And this is where we first meet Christoph Waltz, who's playing Heinrich Harlander, the wealthy arms dealer who finances Victor's experiments and the uncle of Elizabeth. Some have already compared him to Dr. Pretorius from Bride of Frankenstein, as both characters draw Frankenstein into a sort of Faustian bargain. There were also rumors that Christoph Waltz was originally supposed to play the role of Dr. Pretorius. That original plan might have been swapped when Guillermo noted that the war isn't as prominent in the original novel, so the film incorporates it to help explain how the creature is made of different parts, where they came from, and how they all function. Using a character like Heinrich helps frame that. The film diverges from the original material here a bit. In the book, Elizabeth is Victor's kinda sorta cousin, or kinda orphan cousin. It depends on the edition you're reading, but she's essentially just raised to be his fiance. Here she's portrayed as his soon-to-be sister-in-law. And speaking with Variety, Guillermo explained that he envisioned her as a more independent character than a passive figure like she is in the novel. She's a scientist, specifically an entomologist, a choice inspired by Shelley's subtle line describing her as playful as an insect. Elizabeth also functions as a moral counterpoint to Victor, calling him out on his self-deception and his delusions. When we first see Victor in his apartment, I love that the production designer emphasized that this is Victor's first true home away from home. It's a space that belongs entirely to him, reflecting all of his studies, his botany, anatomy, and so much more. They drew inspiration from Bernie Wrightson's iconic depictions of Frankenstein's lab, right down to the lab's chemistry set. Bernie Wrightson is a legendary artist, having spent 7 years creating pen and ink illustrations that celebrate Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. In Heinrich's studio, they speak on the Evelyn tables. The Evelyn tables are 4 of the oldest anatomical preparations in Europe, acquired by John Evelyn in 1646. The tables focus on different systems. Then we meet Felix Kammerer as William Frankenstein. Earlier in the studio's Memento Mori scene, the peach is described as a symbol of life and youth, and I love that the character eating the peach is credited simply as the nymph. She's draped in white, almost as if holiness delights in the fruit. When Elizabeth arrives, however, she immediately gravitates towards the skull instead of the peach, so does that mean that she represents death? In many ways, yes, but later we see her dining on a peach dessert. Only she and Victor actually feast upon the exquisite symbol of life and youth. I'm flagging the symbolism because Elizabeth embraces the full spectrum of life and death, while Victor seeks only to dominate one end of it. However, he is ultimately forced to confront both, whether he realizes it or not. Life and death shape each other, existing in the same cycle, and I believe the peach continues to symbolize life and youth, but just as much as it evokes mortality. You can't have one without the other. Elizabeth's costumes, like Victor's mother's, reflect her passion and purpose. Costume designer Kate Hawley explained that Guillermo wanted her to feel very ethereal. She added, while Elizabeth may perceive herself as a flying insect, the men of Frankenstein view her as their spiritual salvation. When we first see her in the blue gown, it symbolizes this. Guillermo noted that the blue is prominent in men's clothing, especially young William, suggesting a kind of maternal connection Elizabeth provides, one that Victor will soon recognize. In another small addition, her wardrobe is always nestled in like nature themes, featuring green, earthy tones to make her style just more attuned to the real world. They even collaborated with Tiffany to create insect-like jewelry that she wears in the film. Butterflies and their wing patterns actually inspired the green gown. Most, if not all, of her costumes have unique insect-like patterns. Once we arrive at Frankenstein's tower, the Latin inscription at the top reads, "Water is life." The Wallace Tower in Scotland served as the key reference for Victor's lab. The base of the tower was built to stand nearly 180 feet high, while the interiors were constructed across 8 different sets. They also physically built the water tower as miniatures, 26 feet tall. So they're not really miniatures, they're like hugeatures, and they were using these for the wide shots and also for the exploding scenes. At the base of the tower, you see the same flower that was carved into his mother's casket. Above it, there's a symbol that kind of resembles the Medusa, but the beard leads me to believe it could represent the spirit of the forest. It's as if the driving force behind all of Victor's research, his obsession with creation and resurrection, comes down to the figures of his mother and the creature. Yeah, I know I'm right. Circles remain as a running theme and visual motif in the lab, including a circle of Medusa. During research, Del Toro and his team looked at similar structures in northern Africa where Medusa is used as a symbol there. Medusa also mirrors the creature representing a misunderstood monster, as well as the transformation from life to death, from, being alive to stone. Opposite of the Medusa circle is a giant rosette window which frames characters throughout the space. This particular window was inspired by the window in Crimson Peak and was deliberately planned by Guillermo del Toro. The basement of the lab deliberately has a very Crimson Peak aesthetic, and Guillermo del Toro has acknowledged this, saying that Crimson Peak is a dress rehearsal for Frankenstein, period. And is it not? Now fishing for his next body, he's at the hanging. Shelley's original novel takes place in Edinburgh, so it was important to set some of the film there. They used Parliament Square itself for Parliament Square, where the market was actually located in the 1800s. After following Elizabeth, the two sit down for a little lunch or dinner. Elizabeth's new gown blooms in green, but the back of her dress features an elongated spine design, which reappears in her later red gown in the lab. It's a deliberate visual link to the creature himself. By this point, you might have noticed that nearly everything is lit by candlelight. Cinematography cinematographer Dan Lawson, a longtime collaborator with Guillermo working on Nightmare Alley and The Shape of Water, has said that they're not afraid of the darkness. He explained the movement of the camera, the light, everything should feel alive, contemporary, even in this period setting. Lawson emphasized that light itself should have a character, fighting to maintain realism even in the film's grandest moments. On the ship's set, for instance, he insisted on real torches instead of digital flames. When the wind changes, the light changes, he said. Together, they developed a great chemistry in crafting atmosphere. The result is distinctly a Guillermo del Toro movie. Gothic yet alive, rich in the shadows, but never too dark or oppressive to the eyes. The two frolic in the sun now, catching butterflies, and these butterflies look precisely like the ones in del Toro's other movie, Crimson Peak, where even there, Jessica Chastain quipped this:
"They take their heat from the sun, and when it deserts them, they die."
That's sad.
No, it's not sad, Edith. It's nature. It's a savage world of things dying or eating each other right beneath our feet.
Surely there's more to it than that.
Beautiful things are fragile.
A similar philosophy to the creature. The creature will learn that the sun is life. He'll learn how savage the world truly is, but still how beautiful and fleeting it is as well. The internet quickly picked up on this insane detail, more proof that everything Guillermo del Toro has done was building up to Frankenstein. In the bathroom scene, Heinrich follows Victor inside, where he washes his hands, urinates, and then washes them again. Strange, right? Well, Michael Shannon's character did something similar in Del Toro's Academy Award-winning The Shape of Water. He entered the bathroom, washed his hands first, pissed, and then upon leaving he said this:
"Oh, no, a man washes his hands before or after tending to his needs. It tells you a lot about a man. He does it both times. Points to a weakness in character."
And we later learn Heinrich is dying of syphilis. Weakness in character, indeed. We're back to the desolate fairy tale of it all. A dark scene seeing a dead frozen soldier upon his dead frozen horse. Victor is gathering body parts for his experiment, which are made up of corpses from the battlefield. In the background, you can see actually a burned down windmill. There's a couple of them, and this is kind of echoing the ending of Frankenstein's 1931 movie. We see ravens here. We see them frequently. They appear and disappear again when the creature is born. This was also very deliberate. As we follow the creature's story, it takes on a fairy tale quality, with animals guiding him as he learns about the world. This is a storytelling theme that Guillermo wanted for him. Victor continues to use several different body parts to build the creature, and I really like the idea of using a million little pieces rather than a couple here and there. In the original novel, remember that it's a retelling from Victor's perspective, so he leaves out some, major details. Essentially, he just recounts visiting carnal houses and churchyards for materials. In the 1931 film, the creature used the brain of a criminal, and in The Curse of Frankenstein, he used the brain of his former mentor, Professor Bernstein. And this feels like what Heinrich thought Victor would do with his syphilis body, maybe just take the brain out of it and put it into the body of the creature. I don't think it works like that. Well, I guess reanimating a body doesn't work at all. The night that they bring the creature to life, we often imagine a dramatic spectacle of lightning reanimating a corpse. Shelley's novel has Frankenstein creating life in his apartment, much like the 1910 Frankenstein. And it wasn't until the 1931 version that the lab moved to the abandoned watchtower. Guillermo's version isn't a watchtower, but is very eerily similar, perched on the edge of a cliff. Heinrich then reveals the syphilis to Victor.
"One night with Venus, a lifetime with Mercury," isn't that the phrase?
Which is actually very interesting, is that's an actual quote from like the 1800s. People would say that. Honestly, we should bring it back. It's honestly kind of good. Before Heinrich falls to his death, his final words are, "I will be the eagle that feasts on your liver." And this references the myth of Prometheus, who in Greek mythology was punished by Zeus with an eagle that ate his regenerating liver every night. In that moment, Victor is cast as Prometheus, punished for defying the gods. And this ties directly to the subtitle of Shelley's novel, Frankenstein, or the Modern Prometheus. Just as Prometheus stole fire from the gods to give to humanity in an act of creation and rebellion, Victor is punished for defying nature itself. I'm also not trying to be a butthead about Heinrich right now, but like, my dude. Oh no, not the gaping hole in the middle of a rainstorm. What if I slip? Maybe I should move back 10 feet. Like, Yeah, you were gonna die, my dude. That's crazy. That night, Victor throws himself into his bed, and while he dreams of the Red Angel itself feels like a callback to other Guillermo del Toro creations, the Angel of Death in Hellboy 2: The Golden Army, the Blue Wood Sprite in the Sphinx-like Death in Pinocchio. His mother calls, and he awakens to the creature at the foot of his bed, and if this isn't serving real Rocky Horror Picture realness, I don't know what is. It also reminds me of the creature's look in the opening of Danny Boyle's play, his Frankenstein as well. The creature first appearing in bandages isn't unheard of, but it's always fun to see just like everyone's different takes on it. In the novel, the scene is far from dreamy and wondrous. It's late, it's raining, and Victor immediately sees the creature as a monster. Its yellow skin stretched over its muscles, just as described in the book, but Victor is repulsed. On his first day, he basks in the sunlight, and his first words are Victor. As they wander down to his new basement home, they step over this little stream of water. He loves water, and that brings up the same innocence as the 1931 Frankenstein when the creature meets Maria, a sweet girl who approaches without fear, asking his name and inviting him to play. That same innocent curiosity is later reflected between the creature and Elizabeth. In the 1931 film, they toss the daisies into the lake, watching them float, a simple moment of curiosity and joy before tragedy really strikes. In Guillermo's film, we see the creature entertained by watching a leaf drift down that makeshift stream, like a boat, exactly as Maria described the flowers in the 1931 film. When the creature first meets Elizabeth, she wears a blue veil, similar to Claire's first appearance, in which we saw her behind a red veil. If the color palettes still hold, this suggests that the maternal-like connection persists through these two women unto their boys. This is when the creature learns his second word, Elizabeth. And I don't care. I don't care if in the novel he was supposed to kill Elizabeth at the wedding. Guillermo spoke on this a bit, saying she's capable of seeing the unvarnished beauty of a pure soul in the monster. Where Victor sees disappointment, she sees promise. And I think that's love. Love is the capacity to see promise where before there were disappointments. And let me tell you, I love them. I love these two. I'm sorry. I don't care. I love the creature and I love Elizabeth together. In his childlike anger and fits of rage, Victor descends further into his own mania. We're reminded of earlier scenes between him and his father, now mirrored in his interactions with the creature. Just as Victor's father struck him with the tool, Victor strikes the creature. Despite moments where he could have just listened and learned from his offspring, he repeats the same abusive cycle his father inflicted upon him. Now we venture back to the ship where Victor is telling his story to the captain, and now we shift to the creature's tale part 2. This is another change from the original material that I love, in which the creature tells his own story. In the novel, the creature recounts his story to Victor, which Victor then recounts to Walton. After the tower explodes, the creature flees safe from the chaos. Wandering through the forest, still childlike, he wades through the fallen decayed soldiers, a place where death meets new life, and discovers his new cloak. As he continues his journey, he encounters animals, reinforcing the story's fairy tale theme for him. The creatures of the forest accept him as their own. He learns to share, he learns to eat berries alongside the deer, only to face the harsh awakening at the hands of the hunters. Unfortunately, we have to witness his evolution through the story, the ups and the downs, and this is where he starts learning more about the world through direct violence, and it just feels inescapable for the creature. He finds an old mill where the mice lead him to shelter, and the mill belongs to the hunters in the forest. In the novel, it was the DeLacy family, Felix, Agatha, and their father, the blind old man. It doesn't end as happily in the novel for the blind old man or this blind old man, but they're both just as kind. Like in the novel, the creature observes the family from a distance, learning about human behavior and connection. In one scene by the small lake, the daughter picks up a flower while the blind old man laughs with her. The creature watches from behind the trees, longing for that kind of family life that he can never have, mirroring Victor as a child who once watched his father with William, yearning for the same sense of belonging. When the wolves ransacked the farm, Guillermo del Toro used real wolves on set with professional trainers, which he then referenced for the animals' animation. These animals aren't just visual spectacle, they serve as a lens through which the creature begins to understand the world. This was deliberate. The creature even explains.
An idea, a feeling became clear to me. The hunter did not hate the wolf. The wolf did not hate the sheep, but violence felt inevitable between them. Perhaps I thought this was the way of the world. It would hunt you and kill you, just for being who you are.
Much of the creature's understanding of the harsh world stems from past traumas, and Guillermo explained that in writing and shaping his perspective, he had to revisit the kidnapping of his father, which I also recently found out a lot of you guys don't know about. In 1997 or 1998, Guillermo del Toro's father was kidnapped and held captive. They had to pay a ransom for his father to be released. Guillermo's family paid the ransom, but James Cameron, yes, that James Cameron, paid for the negotiator. They paid James Cameron back eventually, but James offered to pay the ransom too. He just jumped in, no questions asked, and was ready to volunteer. And I've summarized one of Guillermo's most traumatic life experience, and words can't fully capture the sheer fear and anger you have for those moments. At first, he resented the son responsible for the pain, but he came to understand that suffering is indiscriminate. It spares no one, not even the innocent. And from this realization, he learned that he must navigate the world as it is, not as he wishes it to be. Kind of like the creature when he witnesses the hunters attacking the wolves and the wolves attacking the sheep. Now, as the family left and the old man is left alone, he finally meets the spirit of the woods. And this moment is very similar to the old man in The Curse of Frankenstein, acknowledging that he can't speak and also that he can't see. The first book the creature reads is the story of Adam and Eve. There's a line I really love in Mary Shelley's novel where he says, "Remember that I am thy creature, I ought to be thy Adam, but I rather the fallen angel, whom thou drivest from joy for no misdeed." And I like to think, as soon as he learned about Adam and Eve and like what religion is, he went, wait, does this play about us? Oh my god, that works on a double level because the creature is in Euphoria. Guillermo del Toro, direct an episode of Euphoria. Actually, don't. That would be horrible. Could you imagine a coke fever dream? That's what it would be. In the novel, he reads The Sorrows of Werther, a volume of Plutarch's lives of the illustrious Greeks and Romans, and Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost is actually the last book on the left that they haven't got to yet. In this film, he describes the books he's read. I read about the rise of rival cities, which could be a lot of different books. It could be biblical, but it could also be just a Roman book. He says, and the collapse of a tower, the Tower of Babel, which is also included in Paradise Lost, and the Wrath of a God, which could be any book, honestly. And I read about men who have fought dragons, which is probably the legend of St. George, and men who have lost everything, which could reference many of Plutarch's books. And also I want to thank Berg for helping me with this section because you know he read those books, I did not. The creature then starts reading the famous lines that come from the poem of Ozymandias by the English romantic poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, the husband of Frankenstein author Mary Shelley. The creature says that in his sleep that he dreams of seeing different men, different pieces. He remembers fire and water and sand under his feet and the single word Victor. He goes back to where it all began and he learns who he is. When the hunters return, chaos then erupts. The old man is killed by wolves and they turn on the creature, seeing him as the monstrous beast. They shoot him in the face, and this moment mirrors the scene of Frankenstein being shot in The Curse of Frankenstein completely. On the night of Elizabeth's wedding, her white gown echoes the same design and themes as the creature. The bandages wrapped around her arm mirrors the bandages on his first day, while the bodice takes on a skeletal quality. The costume designer notes, we're going back to the anatomical language. It also feels like an homage to the Bride of Frankenstein, let's be real. Also, that smack that Mia Goth, I know that wasn't fake. That was so crisp. I want to hit a man like that. It was, sorry Victor, it was a good slap. When Victor storms back to his room, his childlike anger resurfaces. On the wall hangs what appears to be a depiction of Perseus with the head of Medusa. The painting carries multiple meanings, but seeing Medusa as a misunderstood monster in this movie, it could foreshadow Victor's view of himself as Perseus, preparing to finally end the creature once and for all tonight. When the creature steps out of the shadows, I love that his one eye feels a little bit red. The scene feels like a tense choreographed dance. On the surface, it's a conversation, but it's clearly a failed negotiation. The creature is pleading with Victor for a companion, asking for understanding and empathy, and Victor, consumed by his own grief and obsession with control, gaslights him, casting the creature as the true monster and the mistake of the world. I'm gonna kill Victor. I'm gonna kill Victor. The creature's heart is broken, but Victor cannot have Elizabeth, and Victor refuses to see the depth of the creature's real suffering. On the walls, you can also see the mounted deer heads, which emphasize the trap that the creature just walked into. He is the deer, and Frankenstein is the hunter, just as we saw in the forest on his first day outside the tower. He stalks toward Victor, consumed by rage, and throws him around the room, but not before saying this delectable line.
The miracle is not that I should speak, but that you would ever listen! If you are not to avoid me, love, then I will indulge in rage. Mine is infinite!
This is my favorite line in the entire movie. Luckily, the fight stops when Elizabeth interrupts. Victor grabs his pistol and fires it at the creature, but accidentally strikes Elizabeth, who pleads, "Take me with you." As Elizabeth fades, so does William. Both are dressed in white, now stained with their own blood, the color palette that we recall from Victor's mother, a lingering visual reminder of his first loss. If losing her broke him, killing Elizabeth and his brother leaves him unfixable. In his final breath, William tells Victor, "You are the monster." Whew. The creature then carries Elizabeth down the stairs through the party while the petals continue to fall. And what I love about this moment is the juxtaposition. The creature loved Elizabeth and she loved him in return. William loved his brother and Victor loved him in return. But where the creature and Elizabeth's bond was pure and natural love is contrasted by the disappointment from William unto Victor. The cycle of brokenness never ended with Victor because he refused to listen. But the creature broke that cycle. The pattern of abuse and hatred passed down from Victor's father, he broke simply by doing what Victor never could do. Actually actually listen and learn. Every version of Frankenstein, the movie, the book, the endless adaptations ask the same question: who is the real monster? We know that it's Victor. I mean, we know that it's also two heads of the same coin, but we know it's Victor. He's the one that's surprising in this factor. But the way that Guillermo delivers it here, it's kind of like an anvil dropping on your head, right? You can't escape it. Victor is a bad person. Guillermo wanted Victor to be petty, flawed, and painfully human. In the book, I don't think he's as petty and horrible. He said he was interested in why someone can be their best at 10:30 a.m. and an absolute asshole by 11:45. To be human to him is not black and white, it's black, white, gray, and every shade in the middle. He wanted to show imperfect people and the fragile right we have to understand each other even under the harshest circumstances. How you perceive Victor might depend on what part of yourself you recognize in him. For me, I still see him as the monster, maybe because of my maternal instinct toward the creature. But it's worth remembering that the creature never learns that Victor ran back to save him before the explosion went off. In that brief moment, Victor admitted, at least to himself, that he was wrong. It's a small fleeting act of humanity, but an important one. It reminds us that even at his most monstrous, Victor wasn't entirely without remorse. In the cave, the creature breaks Victor's nose, but not before saying this:
You thought me a monster. Now I return the favor.
I don't know if I can even show you that breaking of the nose scene, but we know that the red spills from his nose onto his white chest, into the white snow, mimicking William's death, mimicking Elizabeth's death, their wardrobe stained by their own blood. It feels like the creature broke his nose, not only to hurt him, but to destroy his image, to disfigure him, to shape him like Victor did him. After reaching the heart of the Arctic, where he once again comes face to face with the creature, and I love the silhouette shot before the horizon, the creature, furious and volatile, although he'll find peace by sunrise. There are also moments in the book where Victor can barely make out the creature at a distance, and it's shocking and it's eerie, and I feel like it's similar to this moment where Victor knows it's him and he's terrified. In the tent, Victor blows a hole straight through it, and we see another circle making its way, framing him in the shot. And then we hit my second favorite part in the film, when the creature sets off the dynamite in the Arctic. In Shelley's Frankenstein, the creature doesn't destroy himself with explosives. His fate is pretty, you kind of don't know. He announces he's going to leave and die, however, we don't actually see it. In Guillermo's film, the use of dynamite carries a good symbolic weight. It's a self-destructive act that shows the creature wrestling with his rage, yet not fully realizing that responding with violence, like Victor, will never truly help him move forward. The explosion, though he regenerates, causes him to look like himself in the image that Heinrich took with the tintype. Now, finally having heard the creature's story, Victor knows his pain. And not to jump all the way to the end of the film, but Guillermo spoke about spending over 2 years finding the emotional point of inflection, the moment when the creature's voice truly enters the story. He likens it to a child confronting a parent saying, "Let me tell you what it's like to be me." And that parent must choose to genuinely listen. This becomes the heart of the story, Victor's failure to hear his creation out, to hear anyone out. Guillermo said, if you listen, if you're capable of saying, "I'm sorry," the wounds then heal. So I know I had to do it when Victor loses sight of the creature, when it explodes, and that's the end of it. The ending of the novel is much sadder. Victor dies aboard the ship in the Arctic, haunted by the knowledge that he could not end his creation. When the creature learns of his creator's death, he feels horrible for his actions and decides to end his own. I like this ending more. It reminds me of the ending of Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, where they say Pinocchio ventured into the world, and the world, I believe, embraced him back. Guillermo said if he had made this when he was younger, it would have just been gripes of a son toward a father. He said now it's about desire for forgiveness of a father who was originally a son and who realizes life has thrown him into a role he's not fulfilling. That's very biographical. That's not in the book. That's not Mary Shelley. That's me. Jacob Elordi has spoken about the ending, saying the creature decides that regardless of all the hell, the anguish, and the suffering, he's going to live. And that's really kind of at the heart of all of it, isn't it? The final shot mirrors the first time he meets Victor, his creator. He is no longer chained or a prisoner. He's in control of his own story, his own destiny. And the sun represents life, and now he is truly part of it. The sun as a symbol of that or transformation is not unheard of. We've seen it in a lot of films. We've seen it in Nosferatu. We've seen it in Sinners. But in Frankenstein, it also reflects the creature's own growth and emergence. Just as the ship functions almost as its own character, the sun does too. It's the first thing Victor bestows upon his creation, life and warmth. On the first day, he utters his first word, Victor. The creature experiences the sun as Victor himself. His dad is the sun. There's a sense here that the sun carries a paternal or generational energy. It's the kind of warmth we seek from a parent, or the guiding light we hope from someone who cares for us. There's an episode of Bluey that makes me cry really, really hard, where Bingo dreams of her mother as the sun, the source of light and warmth when she feels cold or lost. It's easy to see how the creature could view Victor as the sun and vice versa, But just as in life, not every relationship is perfect. As Guillermo del Toro reflects on his father's kidnapping, sometimes we must let go of this anger and move forward, even if those moments destroyed us at one point. The movie closes with a quote, "And thus the heart will break, yet brokenly live on," Lord Byron. Byron was a major figure in Mary Shelley's life, serving as both a friend and a mentor. He inspired the creation of Frankenstein by proposing a challenge to write the best supernatural tale during the summer of 1816, a challenge that led Mary to create her novel. Byron was a poet and a soldier who even wrote poetry while serving in the Napoleonic Wars. The quote comes from his long narrative poem, Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, published in 1812 to 1818, which follows the travels and reflections of a young, disillusioned nobleman and mirrors many of Byron's own journeys across Europe and the Mediterranean. And that's where the movie ends. Frankenstein was incredible. I've always focused on storytelling. That's why I always really loved Guillermo del Toro's work for so long. We should all cherish and protect this man. His brain, I need it, put it in my body. Going into the movie, I expected something massive, a spectacle in the way that Guillermo's work often is, but it felt grounded in truth and reality. It's more restrained than his other fantastical films, yet somehow that makes it even more powerful. Once you read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, you realize how much of this film is a love letter to that book. Not just the story, but to the woman who wrote it. Guillermo ensures that characters feel born of her time, but still modern. He poured so much of his internal struggle into each character, and the quotes from this film will be remembered forever. This may cost you a pretty penny to do anything that Guillermo del Toro wants, but let me tell you, you want an Oscar nom? Go to Del Toro. Finance his shit. I don't know what to tell you guys. Comment down below your thoughts. Let me know below your favorite lines from the film, and a special thanks to one of our YouTube members, Frederick Price, who supports us at the executive producer level. Follow me at Lulu Clemons, subscribe to all the channels in the New Rockstars network, and yeah, why not? I'll be your mom. Come here. Slap!